Welcome to the High Pressure Podcast with me, George Rotterman.
And me, Marie Williams. Brought to you by Reliably Ratterman.
Bringing you industry news and trends.
Plus, insightful conversations with industry leaders.
Let's get to today's show. Well, welcome to another episode of the High Pressure Podcast. This one's a little different. This is so exciting. Because normally, any one of these folks would be a podcast in itself. I mean, well, we have three of the folks in the industry. When you go to the trade shows, you go, oh my gosh, there's Jason Kirby, or there's Kevin Falconer, or there's Joe Francis. Any one of those folks you'd want to run up there and ask all kinds of good questions to. But today, we have all three at the exact same time on the High Pressure Podcast. So I actually got to tell you, I don't know if you guys like opera or not. I personally love opera. And I kind of look at this as like the three tenors. You remember that when they had the three tenors? You had the best of the three tenors. They went and they had the Golden Gate, not Golden, it was in New York City. They had the big park there and all the folks showed up. Oh my God, I would have done anything to be at that. So I kind of feel like we got the three tenors here. So here's the thing. I think it'd be fun.
I'm honored.
What's that?
I said I'm honored.
Yeah.
You guys can start singing now.
Yeah. Oh boy.
So what is really kind of cool about this and why we have three people here? But before we talk about why we have three people here, Marie, I think a really cool thing is that maybe we get a little bit of the background from Kevin and Jason, maybe a good 30 seconds, 45 seconds of where you've been. And then we're going to talk about where we're at today. So Kevin, we'll start with you.
All right. Hi. The three tenors. I'm the other guy. The two people are really well known, and then there's that third ambiguous person. I'm happy being that person. Kevin Falconer with Minneapolis Oxygen, third generation president and owner of Minneapolis Oxygen. I've been with the company for 25 years in various roles, always based here in the Twin Cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul. I think I've served in a couple different capacities with GATA, so I know all you guys through that organization.
Yep.
And just real happy to be on with you guys and with my co-tenors here.
Yeah, fantastic. And Jason, we know Joe for a real long time as well. And why don't you give a little history and what up till now, and then we're going to have the big disclosure after that.
So Jason Kirby, for all of you that I have not had the pleasure of meeting yet, I've been in the industry going on 25 years. I started in the industry 2 years after I got out of the Marine Corps and worked my way up through operations, distribution, sales management, and I'm currently the president and COO of Central McGowan.
Fantastic. That's great. Thank you. And Joe Francis. I know we and you have a lot of things in history. We were talking the other day about painting cylinders and painting ceilings and all kinds of stuff in the industry starting out. Bring us up to speed here.
So Joe Francis, been in the industry for, I'm the young guy of the group, 20 years, starting when I was 16. And to your point, I think I've painted every square inch of our St. Cloud company headquarters. Got a little bit thrown into leadership and ownership of the business back in 2011, but have done a variety of roles within the organization over those years. And now here we are to talk about some of the exciting things that we have in store for us in the future.
Yeah. So I'm going to go back to my analogy with the three tenors. Any one of those guys you go to and watch in concert, and it was fantastic. But something brought them all together. And they said, man, we are going to put on the best concert you could possibly think of. And they did. So when we talk about today, tell us a little bit about the unique situation you have that you have, well, really the combining and what that's about. So maybe I'll start with Joe. Let's start with you, Joe Francis.
Oh boy. All right.
Oh boy.
I'll try not to take all the time. So what George is alluding to was really the merge of Central McGowan and Minneapolis Oxygen. If I'm kind of staying in queue a little bit, Kevin and I have known each other for, as long as we've been in the industry, essentially. They had been competitors all of that time. I would say friendly competitors if you put some comparison around the spectrum of competition. We've shared best practices. Yes, we've taken customers from one another. I would say in a positive, as positive a way as you possibly can. And then time progressed, and ultimately, we continued conversations about, well, I'd like to buy you, or maybe I'd like to buy you, or the best case scenario is for a little bit of independent consolidation, but not the consolidation people hear about via national companies or private equity. But why can't two independents put their businesses together in a way that isn't just an acquisition? And it was more so Kevin that pushed on the merge idea, and it came kind of on the heels of ARC3, who many in the industry know. So I'll call them out as the idea generator, and we saw the success happen there, which ultimately sparked that kind of creative conversation amongst Kevin and I. And it took by Kevin, I don't know, the last 10 years maybe of conversation for us to get to this point. And ultimately, we just realized we'd be stronger together, and a lot of detail work happened to get us to that point. But we are today now stronger together.
Yeah. So that was a really good response, by the way. But here's a question I have for you. So, Joe Francis, you're CEO, is that correct?
Correct.
Visionary, right? Kevin Falconer, you are president, is that correct, and CEO of?
No, I'm currently president of Jason and I kind of share the same roles at Central McGowan and Minneapolis Oxygen, but my role will change after our integration over the integration period, and I'll be more of a probably executive vice president role, but sitting right next to Joe and the board of directors as the two owners of the
Okay, gotcha. Okay, and then Jason, you're president, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And the reason I'm asking is a lot of people find it really fascinating. How does that all meld and how does that work? And here's a question. Have you found yourselves actually surprised at how alike you're thinking? Or have you found there's one person has a strength and the other person has a little bit of a weakness and it helps meld those two together? I mean, what's that been like so far?
So I'm gonna answer that, George, and bring us back just to that decade of time. So I think that time period that Kevin and I had to kind of come up with this idea. We're both third generation, right? There's a lot of history. There's a lot of transition process that needs to take place, albeit we both had different paths to leading and owning our businesses.
Yeah.
We both got it to a point where we were ready to make the next move. I had hired Jason to Central McGowan about a year and a half ago, give or take.
Okay.
Really because I wanted to kind of step into that visionary role, and I needed that counterpart. And Jason became and is that counterpart today.
Okay.
Well, it worked out perfectly, and I'll speak for Kevin because Kevin, I think, was in the same place, taking over ownership, taking over leadership of MO2, ultimately wanting, to step more into that visionary role.
Okay.
Well, it worked out perfectly coming together because we had the one person, we had the piece of the puzzle, i.e. Jason, and Kevin and I get along really well and have very similar thinking, to answer your next question, in terms of people, customer, so on and so forth. And so, ultimately the organization today is set up. There's a holding company, Unknown, right, that owns both.
Yep.
Central McGowan, MO2, and a couple others that we haven't talked about. Kevin is president of MO2. Jason is president of Central McGowan. They both hold corporate titles, an executive VP and COO. And then as we integrate and bring kind of the brands together and come out with that branding strategy, and integration process will happen where those teams will come together and everything else. So I figured I'd just take a minute to give a clarity on some of that.
And Kevin?
Yeah, again, Joe nailed it on the head. I'd always, the history of our company is the owner was always the president. I saw a different path for myself. It was taking longer and longer to get there. You get stuck into the day to day of the business, and I really like that. But I always envisioned having somebody like a Jason being the president and the face of MO2. And when Joe and I were talking, and he hired Joe, and I just was so congratulatory. I was just like, great get. He's a great guy.
Yeah.
Truthfully, I don't know if we'd be here today if Joe hadn't made that hire and Jason wasn't sitting in that role. We both agreed he was the right guy for the job, albeit Joe hired him and he was president of Central McGowan. But I couldn't have picked a better person to run my business as well. And so the fact that we were able to come together with the two businesses and now have Jason sitting in that seat and being the leader, that was really a clincher for me, to be honest.
So now it sounds like, knowing both of you guys really well, you both are visionaries, you both have a lot of vision of things where you want to get to. So do you have a tool that you use to say, okay, is there a tie? Like, I really think we should go left. Nope, I think we should go right. Is there a tie? Because one of the things I was just wondering if you did arm wrestling or what kind of thing you do to make that final decision.
I've been working out. Lots of detail, George, related to, getting into specifics such as shareholder agreements, management agreements. And we ironed out, a list of, 25 to 50 things in terms of, here's the decisions that we're likely to be faced with, and here's who gets, probably the say, and here's what needs to be mutually decided upon. We haven't obviously gotten to a place where we're making a decision that we're not mutually decided on. I'll say everything we've done thus far, we've been very aligned and in sync. So that tells me, I think, and Kevin, both what the future looks like for having to make decisions. But it's a delicate thing. Kevin had some wants and asks and things that, he would want to be a part of the decision. I had the same, and we had to line those two things up in an agreement to make sure that it was spelled out. But we ironed that out on the front end. We didn't want to leave any ambiguity to any decisions that we might come across and have to make. So whether I'm the CEO, and Kevin's, an EVP in the organization, we're both on the board.
Gotcha.
So there's an ownership hat we have to wear, and then there's the leadership hat.
Sure. That puts the balance.
And we balance it out with a board of advisors, of outsiders, to really be able to wear both those hats to make good decisions.
Jason, I want to ask you, what is the thing that really surprised you as you're now in the guts of both organizations, and all this is communication, information, data, all the stuff you got? What was the thing that you found yourself, like, in a really happy, pleasant, positive way, surprised? Like, wow, did you have a wow?
I really just think it's been my fellow team members at both companies, and truly how focused they are on not only taking care of fellow team members, but also our customers. Again, and that goes back to the shared core values that we had that I was talking about earlier. They align almost identical. When we reviewed the 4 core values of each company, they literally were the same, maybe worded a little differently, but they align so much. And I think that was the wow moment for me, is you've got 2 longtime independent companies that share the same core values, that are focused on taking care of employees, taking care of customers, and really want to be the premier independent welding supply distributor. So that was the wow moment for me when I was able to meet Kevin and all of his team members and really get to know them.
Yeah, that's great.
Would someone mind sharing actually, Jason, you're the perfect person to ask for this. What was the total of employees you had prior to the merge? I think since the merge, you've acquired, there's a total of 3 companies you've acquired. Is that correct? In total?
So in a year, there's been 3 acquisitions and 1 merge.
Okay.
We went from 140 employees to 260. We went from 7 locations to 20.
That's
in 1 year.
So what I'll start with this question. What was the goal of doing this? I'm sure it's obvious to some, but just to hear it from the horse's mouth, Joe and Kevin, what was the goal of doing this? Like big picture goal of where you wanted this to go?
As an independent distributor, I think everybody, would agree that, you always want to grow. I mean, what does growth mean, right? What metric do you set out for yourself? Is it an annual revenue growth rate? Is it a targeted, geography growth path? Is it an acquisition strategy? Personally, I've always been geared towards the acquisition strategy, and not just to acquire, or not, in our case with Kevin, to merge, but really it's about building a strong organization, one that can compete, better on customer service, talent attraction, family values, and a fun, good place to work, different from our national or private equity competitors, but also one that can compete on price. I mean, in a world where you have Amazons and, price competition and price, transparency, you have to be able to do both. Being larger helps that, but being larger with the same values is just a rocket ship that will fuel continued growth. I mean, Kevin and I talk all the time. We want to create, generational opportunity for both of our families and the families of those within our business. And the only way to do that is to have that growth mindset. I mean, I think I said it on the first podcast, maybe out of place, but if you're not growing, you're dying, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's true. It's just, what do you define growth? And we like acquisitions. I think we've gotten pretty good at it. And we bring a family feel to that process. And we've created, stability and a ability to acquire, maybe not always paying the highest multiple that you might hear, in the industry today, but bringing value that will support, a good transition to any family business that is looking to have their succession plan include the sale of their business.
Absolutely.
So I like that opportunity.
Yeah. And so going from 7 locations to 20 locations, doubling the amount of employees you have, different companies are now acquired as one company. How do you give that outstanding customer service and outstanding, feel of coming to work and feeling heard and being able to grow? What does that look like? Are you looking at who amongst your team you're able to promote into those management positions, or what are your ideas as to how you can maintain, fantastic externally and internally fantastic service?
So, I think, everybody has core values, and but I think, everybody has one that they go to, right? And ours has historically and still is, we're people first. That's employees, that's customers, that's vendors. We put the person in front of anything else, and that's how we make our decisions.
And just being us being a smaller place, Minneapolis Oxygen with 60 employees, there was only so much room for people to grow in their roles. You had, and especially having long-term employees that are, in a seat for 25, 30 years, there's only so much movement within a company like that can happen. Finding a partner like Joe and how he runs his business, I think, their key core value that they lean into is trust, right? And it's, you trust your people and you put people first. And then you have a larger organization that allows people to move, not just geographically, but also up and down the org chart. And there's so many more seats to fill, and you can find the right seats for those people when you have an organization that's larger, that keeps those family values at the forefront of the decision making that we make every day.
Yeah, a well-organized team, an excited team, a trusted team is always going to compete better than the alternative and the customer. I mean, I know that sounds vague, and there's a lot of detail on how we run and manage our business. But, to Kevin's point, and it's all about people. I mean, in this day and age, you got to have price to some degree. It's probably transparent. You have to have logistical capability. You got to pick up the phone, with a smile, right? With a positive attitude. You got to be able to deliver the product in a timely fashion. I mean, all those things are not now probably value adds. They're just an expectation. So then what can we control? Well, we can control the environment in which our people work, control the environment in which, they're allowed to have, authority to make decisions for with the customer in mind. And that's, part of the recipe, I think, that makes that successful.
Absolutely. I also think there's something to be said for founders leading an organization. There's the experience of, I guess, the pain points that have come along with building that company. So if it's third generation running that company, you have 3 generations of pain points that you have taken to heart, that you've learned from your father, grandfather, grandmother, whoever it was running that company at the time. And because you have that like grit and like full love for the company, the people that are working with you are more willing to jump in and do that little extra, I guess if you want to use a metaphor of being at the gym, do those extra 3 sets that they didn't want to do, right? To get us to the end zone. So yeah, I
That's
think
a
that
good point, Marie, just for a second.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
I think myself, and I can speak for Kevin, we love our business. I mean, there's no other major company group that owns multiple businesses or people that can say that they love their company. And it's not just the company itself, it's the people within it. It's, it's the customer that you serve. I have a lot of different customer relationships. I know many of them by name. I know many of the owners of the customers. I know many of the families within the business. I mean, we love and care about it. And that just brings a different mentality to the day-to-day environment that you're creating. You can't replicate it unless you're an independent business like we are today.
Absolutely. You're not looking for an exit out when things get hard. You're going to put up, roll up the sleeves and dig in, right? Of how do I make this an even better company to what it is today?
Right. You got to know your numbers. You got to understand your numbers. You got to rely on them. You have to focus on them. You have to be very talented in managing income statement, balance sheet, cash flow statement. You got to do that. That's a necessary. But you have the authority as an independent business owner to then use that knowledge to do what's right within the organization, which is, I think, different than many other companies have the ability to do.
Yeah.
100%. I also think one more thing that I'll mention, and I'll throw it back over to you, George. But, when you look at large corporations that are not family owned, typically what you'll find is middle management that has they're very generalized. Like the middle management can't really help solve majority of the problems. They have to go get the answers from someone else, and you get that whole runaround, right? And it feels like, especially and we should touch on the other companies you've acquired, it feels like what you guys have set up here is to have teams that are specialists and teams that can rely on each other. They trust each other. It's okay to make mistakes. We're going to regroup. We're going to figure out how we can become the best of the best specialists and not just generalists in what we're doing, which I think really sets you guys apart.
Yeah, if I could jump in real quick, I was going to say, I think one of the biggest differences between independent and publicly traded is independents have that entrepreneurial flexibility, right? You don't have those rigid corporate policies that you have to abide by. And our middle management team is able to have a voice in how we're going to service customers. If they've got an idea on how we improve a process, we listen to it. If it makes sense, we're going to implement it. It's that easy. So, that really is that for me, that's a huge difference in working in both sides of the publicly traded and the independent. I love the freedom. I love the entrepreneurial flexibility that we talked about. And not having to deal with the rigid corporate policies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean I think that's the secret sauce of an independent is quick decisions and reacting quick to those decisions for the customer. And I'm a firm believer that you learn more by making the wrong decision than the right ones. If you're making the right ones all day long, you start to almost feel, like you got this cloak on that you can't be hurt. And you've got to allow your people to make mistakes, as long as they're doing it with the customer in mind, and they're trying to do the best thing for the customer. We'll fix any mistakes on the back end, but you got to give them the freedom to be able to make a decision. And it might be the wrong one, it might be the right one, but we're going to learn from it if it's not the right one. So, and yeah, to your point, as being an owner, and Joe's point of being, loving the business, like, you guys know this better than anybody because the company's name's Ratterman. I mean, you take those, your reputation is everything. And so, you take those personally when you're an owner of a business like that. And so it stings on a different level if they say something bad about your company, and you're the owner of that company. And that's something that, I know Joe takes to heart, and that's certainly something that I take to heart as well.
And, I could really appreciate what you're saying, because, years ago we decided we had three things. We had our team all got together. So really what differentiates us in the marketplace, right? We came back, well, we have reliable delivery, we have reliable solutions and reliable people. Then we changed the name to Reliably Rodderman. Well, when you put the name Reliably Rodderman in front of something, you might get to hear about when you haven't been reliable, right? So it's a constant feedback. But it is your name, and we're proud of what we do at Rodder Manufacturing. I like something you said earlier. It's a really great point. One of the things we look at is everything comes from a very customer-centric perspective. Now, for us, our customers are internal and external, right? And so as long as we're always thinking customer-centrically, then we're going to usually probably do the right thing. We have to look at all the other aspects. Is it safe, and all the things like that we need to look at. But that's what we do as well. We just look and say, what's it customer-centric? How do we make that happen and take care of the customer? And we know, like you said, take care of your people. You need to take care of the internal customers so they can take care of the customers as well.
Yeah, I mean, and we're not perfect. I mean, obviously, as you grow an organization, you need to create good structure, good process, and there's bumps in the road all of the time when we're shifting things around or making decisions. We try our best to listen, and we can be nimble in making change. If we've gone down a path and all of a sudden it's not right, we'll make that change as quickly as possible, whether that's process related or structure related. And I don't want to always knock all of our competition. There's a place for publicly traded. There's a place for private equity. There's a place for all these things. Obviously we're a little biased in terms of that. There's a great place for independence. It's good to have competition to keep us on our toes.
And that's what was really great to be able to have you guys today, because, it's an unusual situation where you've merged together and you cover a large footprint of an area. And you've more than 2 times the amount of folks working for you in less than a year, and up to 20, was it 20 locations? 20 locations. My gosh, from 7 to 20 locations. That's amazing, right? Just to be able to manage that itself. I do have a quick question. I like to ask this question because it's really fun to have 3 folks like yourself on here today. I just want to, you got 15, maybe 20 seconds to answer this, okay? So it's got to be a quick one. What is your absolute favorite thing to do? I don't care if it's work or not. What is your absolute favorite thing to do? Jason, what's your absolute favorite thing to do?
My absolute favorite thing to do is to get out of the office and join my sales team or drivers visiting customers. That is my absolute favorite.
That's a good one. Kevin, your absolute favorite thing to do?
I love roaming the halls and visiting our people. I like going up to the customer service. That was one of my favorite jobs, was customer service, just solving a quick problem and seeing a quick smile on somebody's face. Going into the sales bullpen and talking with the guys and hearing about a problem, and then having a group of us just talk about it and get that quick fix, that quick win. I love that stuff.
Oh, that's great. Joe Francis?
Geez, I was going to say, I mean, I like traveling with the kids and, playing golf. I thought we were going down that path, but just kidding. My absolute favorite thing to do in the business, where I get the most energy, is talking to other business owners or our leadership team, talking about strategy, talking about the next big move, talking about an acquisition, talking about another location. dreaming big about, well, here's the big goal. How do we make steps to actually get to that point, and connecting, whether it's leadership team or other family business owner, just on a deeper level about, here's what we're trying to accomplish. How do we get there?
Okay. Now I got another one. It's not quite the opposite, but close. When the thing that you see or watch or have happen that just gets under your skin, it doesn't have to be a big thing. It could be a big thing. It could be a small thing. Maybe we'll learn a lot about you. Maybe there's a real little thing that bugs the heck out of you. I know sometimes for me, clicking a pen when I'm trying to talk, I can't talk to somebody clicking a pen. So what is that one thing, Kevin, for you?
Oh, for me, gosh, I hate when people don't use their blinker. Oh gosh. I hate spreadsheets. I hate financial statements. It's a necessary evil when you're sitting in a position that I'm in, but it's not my favorite thing. It does not light me up. It does not energize me. I talk about things that are like energy, boosters and energy drains.
Yep.
That stuff's an energy drain for me. I'm a people person. I like being in a room, solving problems, talking to people. But when I've just got to sit there and go through spreadsheets, go through financials, start identifying problems on paper, that's not my forte, and that's not what I love.
Joe, what's yours? Just rankles you, gets under your skin.
That's where Kevin and I balance each other out well, because I love all of the things he just said he hates. So see, this is why this is a match made in heaven.
That is.
My couple of things. I mean, like cleanliness and disorganization just get under my skin. I'm a type A personality. If it's clean and organized, it's managed. So that's a big thing. And then, if we're talking about the trio, which now we have solved with Jason, it's talking about these big ideas, and then I leave the room thinking we're moving, and then I come back a month later and nothing's happened. I'm like, what the heck's going on? I thought we made the decision. But solved now with Jason in the room. That was the piece I was missing.
Jason, what's the thing that gets under your skin that just drives you nutty?
I think when somebody comes in with an issue to talk through, but doesn't have any potential resolutions.
Yeah. Okay. That's a good one. Yeah. As you guys look at the gas industry and looked out 5 years, 10 years now, is there a certain area you think is really the growth area that people should be focused on? I mean, 3 or 4 years ago, it was a conversation a lot about hydrogen. Today, where do you see that? Wow, you should really. I mean, at one point it was getting into specialty gas. But where were you at today? What do you see as that next frontier opportunity?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think as you see what's happening with the current president, he's trying to bring manufacturing back to the United States, which I think is great. I think that is going to be where our industry goes over the next 5 years. As he's bringing manufacturing back to the United States, that's going to be opportunities for the independents for sure.
Okay.
That includes high-tech manufacturing, electronics, all of it.
Yeah. All the different elements of manufacturing.
Correct.
Great. And Kevin, what are your thoughts?
To Jason's point, I think, as manufacturing comes onshore, whether they choose to do business here or not, this is a R&D and the semiconductor industry here in the Twin Cities is pretty strong. The healthcare industry is pretty strong. You got to look at your market segments and see what's there and available. Joe and Central McGowan has done a really good job on the bev carb and dry ice side of the business. One of our locations did really good in that, but now stronger together, as Joe was alluding to before, like that space has opened up quite a bit for us. And so those are going to be markets that we're going to be able to penetrate more deeply than we had before.
Yeah, that's great.
What has been one of the biggest challenges, if you could go back and go, oh man, you don't even have to say lesson learned, because maybe you're still dealing with it, but I'll just ask what has been the biggest challenge so far for each of you?
I can. Oh, go ahead, Joe. Okay, I'll go. I think we really tried to work on the communication to our employees. And what we tried to do is we tried to slow roll. We were like, hey, we're going to walk before we jog, before we run. One of the things that we learned is that, we did the communication piece, I think, really well. I think you can never communicate this kind of change enough or effectively enough or often enough. But one of the things that we learned is we tried to show our teams some quick wins to show them, just how well our teams could work together, just how much value we could bring to our end users. But one thing that we learned was that once we showed them a couple of those quick wins, we heard from our people, like, they wanted to run. They were ready to run before we were even ready to jog. And so we had to go back as a leadership group and be like, okay, we have to adjust how we're going to try and implement this to keep up with the wants and needs of our team members, our employees. Like they really wanted to work together so badly and so quickly that we had to kind of, Joe alluded to before, like, you make a decision to go down one path, but you hear and you listen to your people, and you can pivot really quickly to give them what they want and what they need. And so that's one growing pain I think that we're probably still working through, is just trying to keep up, but do it in a thoughtful way so we don't have to go back and do a bunch of rework for our team and our people.
And before I get to your answers, Jason and Joe, how are you listening to your people? Because that's I think easier said than done. How are you giving them a voice so that you're getting that feedback right away? Because it's I think the most difficult thing in a company as you scale is to get the immediate feedback from your employees of either customers, satisfied, not satisfied, how they're feeling, how they're working together, cross-department communication. So how are you getting that feedback?
Well, I would say first and foremost, we all have an open door policy. So we're in the office every day. We're always communicating with our fellow team members, checking in, seeing how the morale is going. How's it going taking care of our customers? Are there any issues that we need to be made aware of? But for the integration itself, we also set up an email. So somebody could send in blind emails with questions, concerns, any ideas that they might have to make the organization better. And then we address those. Kevin and I address those in our weekly update meetings that we do. So we do a 5 to 10 minute video every week of the progress we've made on the integration. And then we also address any opportunities or concerns that employees have brought up from that previous week.
I love that idea. That's a fantastic idea. I know a lot of companies will go like the blind survey route or whatnot, but I love getting that immediate. They can send it immediately, and then that week it's addressed. That's really cool. And Joe and Jason, I would love to hear from you what your biggest challenge has been throughout this experience.
Yeah, I think to piggyback off of that a little bit too, we're willing to work hard, which means we're willing to listen and take action quick. To Kevin's earlier point, that was an aha. It's like we set a timeline: walk, jog, run, end of year ERP consideration. And everybody internally wanted it faster. And so we sat back and said, okay, well, that can we work hard? Can we get it done faster? So it starts with good process, of course. If you get a little more granular, both Kevin, MO2, and Central McGowan were running on a similar, call it the management backbone, entrepreneurial operating system, Traction or Pinnacle. We were utilizing an internal management system to run our businesses. And so we were able to really quickly understand the structures, processes, the measurables, the numbers. We got to put integration teams specific to function together immediately. So marketing, HR, IT, general ops, general sales, with key individuals from across each functional department that we could put together to be kind of the hit team. Like, you guys are out of your normal day-to-day. Forget about what you worked on in your other weekly meeting. We're focusing on integration topics. How are we going to solve this? What are we going to do about this? And leadership's involved, Jason or Kevin or myself or others. And so we're listening and we're making quick decisions. All of that together with what, the ahas of what Kevin mentioned with the open door, the email list, the communication, the weekly meetings. I mean, there's probably a book we should write for ourselves to follow on the next one so that we take all of the best practices from what we've been dealing with for the last few months, compartmentalize it, put it in play for, any future acquisitions or merges that we do. But
and Jason, how about yourself?
I guess the biggest thing for me is my owner's not giving me a chance to catch my breath. No, I would say it goes back to making sure, as Kevin and Joe both hit on, making sure that we're not leaving anybody behind in the integration process, doing our best to over communicate, doing our best to address concerns, doing our best to take any ideas that they might have to make the company run better and implement that in the integration process. And then lastly, I would say anybody that's had an acquisition or done a merger, there's a lot of work behind the scenes on the ERP conversions that have to happen. And that is making sure that the team members that are involved with that feel like they've got a voice, they're being heard, and you're providing them the support that they need when they request it. Because that's where a lot of the work happens.
Yeah, I can only imagine. We're looking at ERP systems right now, and just for our own, it's like, whew. So
it's a lot.
Well, I would like to also ask, and George, if you want to jump in now, you can, but for the industry and for your customers, what do you want them to know about what this holds for them?
It's a great
question.
question.
Too big of a question?
No, I think it's good. We're here. We're here for the long term. We're at a scale that can supply and serve with the mentality, of an entrepreneurial family business that, can bring value via trust. And we're going to be here for a long time. And we hope to continue to do what's right for the customers, to do what's right for the industry, and be able to supply products to customers at a good price with good service, right? I think that encompasses it for me.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
One of the things I think I loved that I heard it through all this is really the basics, and those basics that you have, the core values and who you are. And, we all know about the basics and how hard it is to do the basics. Amazing, repeating it, throughout. And I like what you said there when you talked about the merger, having a shared expectation, shared values, complementing skills, and having the history and knowledge together. Those are really the basics, right? But they're hard. It's really hard to get all those together. So I think that's a really great piece of takeaway from this when people are thinking about maybe doing mergers and how that can bring value. Those 4 things I think really are key. So I really appreciate you guys taking the time today and sharing your thoughts, your ideas with us. And it's really been wonderful having you on the, High Pressure Podcast. So thank you so much. And thank you for all the things you do for the industry, and thank you for all the things you do for auto manufacturing.
Well, thank you for having us. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, thanks, George.
Thanks for watching. Stay up to date with the latest news in the gas and welding industry by clicking on the subscribe button.
And check out one of our other videos to learn more. Find out more about Reliably Ratterman at rmiordered.com.